Dracula, Chapter 10, pages 149 to 163. Letter from Dr. Seward to Arthur Holmwood, September 6th. My dear Art, my news today is not so good. Lucy is a bit worse. There is, however, one good thing which has come from it. Mrs. Westenra was anxious about Lucy and asked me my advice as a doctor. So I was able to tell her that my old teacher, the great specialist Van Helsing, was coming to visit me, and that he and I would look after Lucy. So now we can come and go without alarming her too much. Yours, John Seward. Dr. Seward's Diary, September 7th. When Van Helsing and I arrived at the house, Mrs. Westenra met us and showed us up to Lucy's room. If I was shocked when I saw her yesterday, I was horrified when I saw her today. She was ghastly, chalky pale. The red color had even left her lips and gums, and the bones of her face stood out sharply. Her breathing was painful to see or hear. Van Helsing's face grew hard as marble, and he frowned so that his eyebrows almost touched over his nose. Lucy lay motionless and did not seem to have strength to speak. Then Van Helsing motioned to me, and we went out of the room. "My God," he said, "this is dreadful. There is no time to be lost. She will die for want of blood. There must be a transfusion at once. Is it you or me?" "I am younger and stronger, Professor. It must be me." "Then get ready at once. I will bring up my bag. I am prepared." I went downstairs with him, and as we were going there was a knock at the hall door. When we reached the hall, Arthur was there. He rushed up to me whispering, "Jack, I was so worried. I read between the lines of your letter. Dad was better, so here I am. Is this Dr. Van Helsing? I am so thankful to you, sir, for coming." Van Helsing held out his hand. "Sir, you have come in time. Our dear miss is bad, very, very bad, but you can help her, and you will need your courage." "What can I do?" asked Arthur hoarsely. "Tell me, and I shall do it. I would give the last drop of blood in my body for her." The professor nearly chuckled at that, saying, "My dear young man, I do not ask that much. Not the last drop." Arthur looked bewildered, and the professor explained in a kindly way. "Our Miss Lucy needs blood, or she will die. My friend John and I are about to perform a transfusion. John was able to give his blood, as he is younger and stronger than I. But now you are here—" Arthur interrupted. "I would gladly die for her. Let us begin." "Good boy," said Van Helsing. "Soon you will be happy that you have done this for her. Come now, you shall kiss her once before it is done, but then you must go. Say nothing to her mother. You know how she is." We all went up to Lucy's room. Van Helsing asked Arthur to remain outside. Lucy turned her head and looked at us, but she was too weak to speak. Van Helsing mixed a sleeping drug, and coming over to the bed, said cheerfully, "Now, little miss, here is your medicine. Drink it up like a good child. See, I lift your head so you can swallow easily." Once she had fallen into a deep sleep, the professor called Arthur into the room and began the transfusion. As the transfusion went on, something like life seemed to come back to poor Lucy's cheeks. Although Arthur grew pale, his face shone with joy. After a bit, I began to worry, for the loss of blood was obviously weakening Arthur, even though he was a strong man. It gave me an idea of what a terrible strain Lucy's system had been under. When it was over, and I was bandaging Arthur's wound, Van Helsing adjusted the pillow under Lucy's head. Lucy always wore a narrow black velvet band around her throat, fastened with the diamond pin Arthur had given her. As the professor shifted her head, the velvet ribbon slipped a little. I heard Van Helsing suck in his breath with a hiss. He said nothing, but turned to me saying, "Now take our brave young lover downstairs. Give him a glass of wine, and let him lie down a little. He must then go home and rest, sleep much, and eat much." When Arthur had gone, I went back to the room. Lucy was sleeping gently, but her breathing was stronger. Van Helsing sat by the bedside looking at her intently. The velvet band was again in place. I asked the professor in a whisper, "What did you see?" "I have not examined it yet," he answered, and then loosened the band. Just over the jugular vein were 2 punctures, not large, but nasty looking. The edges were white and seemed worn. Of course, it occurred to me that this wound, or whatever it was, might explain the loss of blood, but it was ridiculous to think she could have bled so much from such tiny wounds. In order to leave Lucy as pale and nearly dead as she had been before the transfusion, the whole bed would have had to be drenched in blood. "Well," said Van Helsing. "Well," I said, "I don't understand it." The professor stood up. "I must go back to Amsterdam tonight," he said. "There are books and things there which I want. You must stay here all night, and you must not let her out of your sight. I shall be back as soon as possible, and then we may begin." "May begin?" I said. "What on earth do you mean?" "We shall see," he answered, as he hurried out. He came back a moment later, and put his head inside the door. "Remember, she is your responsibility. If you leave her and she is harmed, you will not forgive yourself later." September 8th. I sat up all night with Lucy. When she woke in the morning, she looked like a different person. Her spirits were good, and she was full of happy energy. When I told Mrs. Westenra that Dr. Van Helsing had ordered that I should stay with Lucy, she almost pooh-poohed the idea because her daughter looked so well. I was firm, however. After her maid had gotten her ready for bed that evening, I came in and sat down by her bed. She did not ask any questions, but gave me a grateful look. After a long time, she seemed to be dozing off, but then sat up as though to shake off her sleepiness. It was clear that she was trying to force herself to stay awake, so I tackled the subject at once. "You do not want to sleep?" "No, I am afraid." "Afraid to go to sleep? Why, it is rest we all need." "But for me, sleep opens the door to horrible things." "What kind of horrible things?" "I don't know. Oh, I don't know, and that is what is so terrible. All these bad things happen when I sleep, until I dread the very thought." "But, my dear girl, you may sleep tonight. I am here watching you, and I can promise that nothing will happen." "Ah, and I can trust you," she said. "I promise that if you seem to be having any bad dreams, I will wake you at once." "You will? Oh, will you really? That would be most wonderful. Then I can sleep." Almost immediately, she gave a deep sigh of relief and sank back asleep. All night long I watched her. She never moved, but slept on in a deep, peaceful, health-giving sleep. There was a smile on her face, and it was clear that no bad dreams were disturbing her. In the early morning, her maid came in. I left her to watch Lucy and went back home. I sent telegrams to Van Helsing and to Arthur, telling them of the excellent result of the transfusion. My own work at the asylum took me all day, so it was dark when I was able to inquire about Renfield. The report was good. He had been quiet for the past day and night. A telegram came from Van Helsing in Amsterdam while I was at dinner, asking me to spend the night at the Westenras, and saying that he would meet me there early in the morning. September 9th. I was pretty worn out when I got back to the Westenra's house. For 2 nights I had hardly had a wink of sleep, and my brain felt numb with exhaustion. Lucy was up and in cheerful spirits. She gave me one look and said, "No sitting up for you tonight. You are worn out, and I am quite well again. In fact, if there is any sitting up, I will sit up with you." I could not argue with that, but went and had my supper. Lucy came with me, and I had an excellent meal and 2 glasses or more of excellent wine. Then Lucy took me upstairs and showed me a room next to her own, where a cozy fire was burning. "Now," she said, "you must stay here. I shall leave this door open, and my door too. You can lie on the sofa. If I need anything, I will call out, and you can come to me at once." I had no choice. I could not have stayed awake if I had tried. Making her promise again to call me if she needed anything, I lay on the sofa and forgot about everything. Lucy Westenra's diary, September 9th. I feel so happy tonight. I have been so miserably weak, and now to be able to think clearly and move about is like feeling sunshine after a long spell of bad weather. Somehow Arthur feels very, very close to me. I seemed to sense his presence warm about me. What a wonderful sleep I had last night, with good Dr. Seward watching me. And tonight I will not be afraid to sleep with him just in the next room. Thank everybody for being so good to me. Thank God. Good night, Arthur. Dr. Seward's diary, September 10th. I woke up to feel the professor's hand on my head. "And how was our patient?" he asked. "Very well when I left her, or rather when she left me," I answered. "Come, let us see," he said, and together we went into the room. The blind was down, and I went over to it while Van Helsing stepped over to the bed. As I raised the blind and the morning sunlight flooded the room, I heard the professor's hissing intake of breath. Deadly fear shot through my heart. "God in heaven!" he exclaimed, his face a mask of horror. I felt my knees begin to tremble. There on the bed, lying as if she had fainted, was poor Lucy. She was more horribly white and weak-looking than ever before. Even her lips were white, and her gums seemed to have shrunk back from the teeth, as we sometimes see in a dead body after a lengthy illness. Van Helsing raised his foot to stamp in anger, but he regained control of himself and put it down again softly. "Quick," he said, "bring the brandy." I ran to the dining room and returned with the bottle. He wetted the poor white lips with it, and together we rubbed the alcohol into her palms and wrist. He felt her heart, and after a few moments of agonizing suspense said, "It is not too late. It beats, but only weakly. All our work is undone. We must begin again. There is no young Arthur here now. I have to call on you yourself this time, friend John." As he spoke, he was reaching into his bag and pulling out the instruments of transfusion. I had taken off my coat and rolled up my shirt sleeve, and so, without a moment's delay, we began the operation. After a time, it did not seem a short time either, for the draining away of one's blood, even if it is willingly given, is a terrible feeling. Van Helsing held up a warning finger. "Do not move," he said, "but I fear that she may wake, and that would be dangerous. I shall give her an injection of morphine." The transfusion was having a good effect on Lucy. I felt proud to see a faint tinge of color steal back into the pale cheeks and lips. It is a strange and wonderful feeling for a man to watch his own life blood fill the veins of the woman he loves. When we stopped the procedure, he attended to Lucy, and I applied pressure to my own incision. I lay down, for I felt faint and a little sick. While he was finished with Lucy, he bandaged my wound and sent me downstairs to get a glass of wine for myself. As I was leaving the room, he came after me and half whispered, "Tell Arthur nothing of this. It would frighten him and make him jealous as well. So not a word." When I came back, he looked at me carefully and then said, "You do not look too bad. Go into the room and lie on the sofa and rest a while. Then have a big breakfast and come back here." I followed his orders. I had done my part, and now my duty was to keep up my strength. I fell asleep on the sofa, wondering over and over again how Lucy could have relapsed so quickly. How could she have lost so much blood with no sign to show for it? I think I must have continued my wonder in my dreams, for even in my sleep my thoughts came back to the little punctures in her throat, tiny though they were. Lucy spent most of the day sleeping. When she woke, she was fairly strong, though not nearly as well as the day before. Once Van Helsing had seen her, he went out for a walk, leaving me with strict orders not to leave her for a moment. I could hear his voice in the hall, asking the way to the nearest telegraph office. Lucy chatted with me freely and seemed quite unaware that anything had happened. I tried to keep her amused. When her mother came up to see her, she said to me gratefully, "We owe you so much, Dr. Seward, for all you have done, but you really must now take care of yourself. You are looking pale yourself. You need a wife to look after you, that you do." As she spoke, Lucy blushed, with a jolt of pain went through my heart. Van Helsing returned in a few hours and said to me, "Now you go home and eat a good dinner. Make yourself strong. I stay here tonight, and I sit up with the little miss myself. Don't talk to anyone about this case. I have my reasons." September 11th. This afternoon I found Van Helsing in excellent spirits, and Lucy much better. Shortly after I arrived, a big parcel arrived for the professor. He opened it and took out a great bundle of white flowers. "These are for you, Miss Lucy," he said. "For me? Oh, Dr. Van Helsing." "Yes, my dear, but not just to look at. These are medicines." Here Lucy made a wry face. "No, I won't make you eat or drink them, so you don't have to wrinkle your pretty nose. This is a different kind of medicine. This flower, I put him in your window. I make pretty wreath and hang him round your neck, so you sleep well." While he was speaking, Lucy had been looking at the flowers and smelling them, and now she threw them down, saying with laughing disgust, "Oh, Professor, you are joking. These are garlic flowers." To my surprise, Van Helsing stood up and said sternly, "I am not joking. Do as I say, for the sake of others, if not for your own sake." Then, seeing poor Lucy's frightened face, he went on more gently. "Oh, little miss, my dear, do not fear me. I do this only for your good. There is much good in those flowers. See, I place them myself in your room. I make myself the wreath that you are to wear. Come, friend John, help me deck the room with my garlic, which is all the way from my friend Vanderpool's greenhouse. I had to telegraph yesterday, or they would not have been here." The professor's actions were certainly odd, and not mentioned in any medical classes I had ever attended. First, he locked all the windows securely. Next, taking a handful of the flowers, he rubbed them all over the window frames, as though he wanted every whiff of air that got in to be scented with garlic. He did the same on the door frame, and even around the fireplace. It all seemed bizarre to me. Finally, I said, "Well, Professor, I know you always have a reason for what you do, but this certainly puzzles me. One would think you were working a spell to keep out an evil spirit." "Perhaps I am," he answered quietly, as he began to make a wreath of garlic flowers. When he waited, we then waited while Lucy got ready for bed. Once she was tucked in, he fixed the wreath of garlic around her neck. The last words he said to her were, "Take care you do not disturb it, and even if the room feels warm, do not open the window or the door." "I promise," said Lucy, "and thank you both for all your kindness to me." As we left the house, Van Helsing said, "Tonight I can sleep in peace, and sleep I need. Tomorrow morning, early, you pick me up, and we come together to see our pretty miss. She will be much more strong for my spell which I have worked. Ha!" He seemed so confident. I remembered my own confidence of 2 nights before, and how wrong I had been. I did not have the courage to tell Van Helsing my fears, but I felt them like unshed tears.